welcome to the podcast. My name is Gerard Bissett, author of The Ultimate Survival Guide for College Success and forthcoming book, How to Become the Most Successful Millennial in Your Organization. Today's guest needs no introduction, as his books have sold more than 15 million copies worldwide. He is ranked one of the top 5 leadership experts in the world. His social media posts reach 600 million people per year, and for more than 20 years he has coached world-class organizations such as NASA and Nike. He is best known for some of his works called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari and The Leader Who Had No Title. His name is Robin Sharma.
Gerard, great to connect with you.
Oh, well, Robin, it's my pleasure to have you on the show. So just as a little starter, I really want to get people to know who you are on the show. And let's talk a little bit about your book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. It's about this guy called Julian Mantle. Now, when I first read the book, I could not help but wonder what's similar between you and Julian.
Well, it's a great question. I used to be a litigation lawyer. I was very unhappy in that profession. Long story short, as I was growing up, the world around me said that if you become a lawyer, you'll be quote unquote successful. You'll wake up with a sense of fire in the belly. You'll find fulfillment, and you'll fit in with society and get all the applause and acclaim that people look for. And so I did that, but in the process, I betrayed myself. I betrayed, following my personal talents. I betrayed my values. And so I'd wake up as a litigation lawyer and I was successful in the world, but I'd look in the mirror and I had no sense of self and no fulfillment and no joy. So, like Julian Mantle, I made a decision to leave the world and go on an adventure. And in The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, as you know, Julian Mantle leaves his law profession, and he had a heart attack. I didn't have a heart attack, but he went to the Himalayas and he met this group of sages who shared with him how to live a truly successful life and a meaningful life and a creative life and a joyful life. And I went on my own journey and I found my own lessons.
So one of the principles in the book is it's a Japanese principle called Kaizen. And I suppose when I was doing my undergraduate degree, I was sitting in the class and our lecturer said, has anybody ever heard of the word Kaizen? And I put up my hand and people looking at me. I'm the only guy in the room who knows what this principle called Kaizen is. So could you explain a little bit about what exactly is Kaizen and how can that help our lives?
Sure. Well, it's a Japanese philosophy, as you mentioned, it's a Japanese philosophy that was used with great success in the manufacturing sector, Gerard. And, I have a brain tattoo that I teach around it, which is small, daily, seemingly insignificant acts of improvement over time, when done consistently over time, lead to stunning results. And so, really, your days are your life in miniature. There's a great seduction into saying, well, what do I need to do to win over time? But if you just own each day and make small, incremental, seemingly insignificant improvements in the important areas of your life, whether that's your health, your mindset, your heart set, your craft, your financial life, your impact on the world, those small, seemingly insignificant iterations and optimizations, when done consistently over time, lead to revolutionary results. And it's easy to forget that because they seem so insignificant.
And it's interesting that you say that, because I had the pleasure of writing my second book over in the United States, and
congratulations!
Thank you. And I was in my cousin's condo, and we were listening to The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, and you were listening through all these different principles, journaling and Kaizen and eating healthy, and as you were saying all these things, my cousin was saying tick, tick, tick. So he was really living your work, and it was very interesting to say that. And a principle I always share with my cousin is that rich people have what's the quote about rich people having big TVs and the other guys having the big libraries? You'd say it much better than me.
Well, it's the victim loves entertainment, the leader loves education. Worry less about, like, the average performers have large TVs. Ultra performers have massive libraries.
That's the one.
You know the point very well. And which is, I call it the 2x, 3x mindset, to double your income and your impact, triple your investment in two core areas, your personal mastery and your professional capability. And so if you look at, Warren Buffett, I just watched a great documentary on him, and it's called Becoming Warren Buffett. Well, when you watch that documentary, and it really is worth watching, you'll see that he spends between 6 and 8 hours a day reading. And, another brain tattoo I have is, if you want to have the results only 5% of the population have, you've got to be willing to do what 95% of the population aren't willing to do. And we live in a world where so many people are suffering from an addiction to distraction. They're looking at their notifications. They're watching the latest Netflix show. They're watching video games. They're playing with apps. And yet, if you look at the top 5% of producers, they run a completely different race. And it's less about entertainment and distraction. And it's a lot more about education and developing your skill set and your craft so you can bring on ridiculous value to your marketplace.
It's interesting that you say that, because I feel like we've read some of the same books, such as The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, and it's really what makes it tight and different from all of us is their daily practices. And if your daily practice is checking your notifications, it's not going to yield a different result.
Yeah, that's completely right. And the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, you're right. It's absolutely one of my favorite books. And knowing you probably know the backstory, but Marcus Aurelius was a Roman warrior and emperor, and during a multi-year military campaign stuck in the swamps of northern Europe, he wrote out his take on life, his life philosophies, and someone found the words and published the book. But I think your larger point is a really good one, which is, the quote-unquote secret of genius isn't your DNA, it's your daily habits. And that's such a seduction of society. We look at Beckham and Kanye, Shakespeare and Tolstoy, Federer and Buffett, and we think these people are somehow gifted and more talented than you, me, and all of your listeners. And science and research is absolutely confirming that genius is less about your natural gifts, and it's a lot more about what you do with the talent you're born with. It's actually called capitalization. James Flynn is an eminent American psychologist, and he came up with this term capitalization, which just means how much of the talent you were born with you actually bring to the light of your days. And the real way to do that is, what are your daily rituals? And you probably know, but I've spent the past 3 years writing my new book, The 5 a.m. Club, and that's based on a concept. I've been teaching the 5 a.m. Club for going into my third decade. And the concept has helped millions of people really own their fields and live much more successful and meaningful lives. And the book is really about not only the 5 a.m. Club, but what do you do between 5 and 6 a.m.? And I call it the 20-20-20 formula. It's the first 20 minutes of your day. If you really want to win, you absolutely must get involved in intense exercise. And we probably don't have the time to get into it, but if I was to deconstruct that first 20 minutes, you want to sweat, because sweating releases BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is pretty much Red Bull for the brain, And then when you exercise first thing in the morning, you release dopamine, which is the inspirational neurotransmitter, and serotonin, which is the pleasure chemical, and oxytocin. And literally, you feel like you're on fire to create and produce epic things, and just by spending 20 minutes in intense movement. The second 20 minutes is when you reflect. So 5:20 to 5:40, that's when you journal. That's when you meditate. That's when you pray. That's when you consider your values, so you live out the day along your priorities versus distraction. And then the final 20-minute pocket of the 20-20-20 formula that my new book, The 5 a.m. Club, is really based on is learning. And I'm sure you're the same as me, but if I spend 20 minutes learning at the front end of the day, it fills my mindset and my heart set with incredible hope. But also, I get this fuel of education and learning, and I go out there in the world and apply it, and incrementally over time, it leads to some revolutionary results. So I hope that's been helpful, walking you and your listeners through the 5 a.m. Club concept and the 20-20-20 formula. It really is, if you practice it for 66 days, which is the time required to install a new habit, it really is a complete game changer.
You know, it's really interesting you speak about that learning, because I just recall a moment last week. I was listening to Paulo Coelho, the author of The Alchemist, and he was being interviewed by Oprah. And Oprah asked him, the question was, what was the greatest lesson that you wish you had have learned sooner? And he said humility. And that was something that really stuck with me for the rest of that day. And it's something now I'm carrying forward and every day since then. You know, just the power of learning. It just has had a great impact on my life.
Well, you know, Paulo's a very wise man. And if you look at, if we talk about corporations, if you look at what happened to Blockbuster, if you look at what happened to BlackBerry, if you look at what happened to Kodak, if you look at what happened to Nokia, those companies suffered from what I call the Titans decline. They were untouchable in their market when they were really winning. But they lost that humility to stay nimble and to innovate and to listen to their customers and to learn and to go blue ocean. And it happens to people too. You know, we become successful and we forget who puts food on our table. We become successful and we stop getting up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning so we can really prepare ourselves and serve our marketplaces. You know, we fall in love with our own thinking versus having the guts to disrupt our thinking for the sake of new thinking. So I think you're right. You know, part of success in business and in life is just, you know, staying humble. And that's, like I said before you started recording, that's why I love coming to Ireland. That's why I love coming to Dublin. And of course, I'm not just saying this, but you've got some of the most authentic, real, boots on the ground people in Ireland. And I love it.
You know, it humbles me to hear you say that, Rob. And it's just like you say in your book, The Greatness Guide, nothing fails like success. And that's really a concept that I hold with me every day.
Well, you know, you look at Warren Buffett. Let's go back to Warren Buffett. It's hard enough to rise to world class for a window of opportunity, let's say a year or two. And you see a lot of the pop stars, you know, they're 1 or 2 or 3 hit wonders. But what makes legendary is longevity. And there are let's talk about a Dublin band, you know, there are very few U2s.
Yep.
There are very few Warren Buffetts. And, you know, Bono said it really well. He said, we've been on the verge of irrelevance for 20 years. You know, they had a winning formula, and then they said, you know what? We've got to have the guts to stay humble and tear it all down. So they did the Zoo Tour where they could have lost their shirts. And, you know, last time I was in Dublin, I mentioned, you know, a few 8-9 months ago, I was in Dublin for the Pendulum Summit. Great event. And someone at that event said, you know, we know Bono, and they said, we met him, and it was basically, hello, sir. You know, hello, sir. Something like, are you good? Or something like, I don't know what the term you guys use, but it was something like, hello, sir, are you good? And that behavior and model speaks much louder than I could ever say about someone at the top of their game, one of the most famous people in the world, who still understands, you know, the power of being humble and keeping your boots on the ground. And I do think it is an Irish thing.
I know, and you're such a huge evangelist of being a human being versus a human doing. And it's just that humility that it kind of it takes me a step back. It's just so heartfelt, and it's from a different level. I wanted to talk to you about your event, the Tiding Summit, and a guy in particular who's going to be speaking at the event is a guy called Philip McKernan, Irish guy.
Sure.
He's actually been a previous guest on my show. So what is it about the Titan Summit that brings so many people back every year?
Well, so I've been running the Titan Summit this will be our 5th anniversary. And it was a dream I had 5 years ago to run and create and orchestrate one of the finest live events on the planet for empire makers and history creators. And I brought in Richard Branson, Shaquille O'Neill. Last year in Zurich, we had the co-founder of Apple, Steve Wozniak, who just, blew the room open. But part of his magic was also his humility. But the point is, it's really a labor of love. And the reason why people come back from around the world every year is it works. It's not only inspiration, it's you're in a room full of billionaires, you're in a room full of some of the most creative and successful and decent people in the world. And you learn, cutting edge information on everything from longevity to exponential productivity to building a world-class company. And you mentioned Philip McKernan, and I laughed because he spoke on my stage last year at the Zurich event. And as you know, he talks about, living your gifts through creativity and through your work. And he was just a phenomenal speaker. And, he just brought such humanity into the room, and he's just a great person. So I've got to know him and his brother a little bit, and they're just truly wonderful people.
I'm just glad somebody's out there flying the flag for Ireland.
Oh, he's flying the flag for Ireland. That's for sure. That's for sure.
So, you really heavily invest in your own learning, and you regularly travel to other events and all over the world, and you host your own. So what do you really think is the commonality that the people going to these events, what are they looking for?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, some people are quite broken, and so some of these events in, let's call it, the personal development field, are for people who have some deep wounds. My events are not for that. I'm not saying those events are wrong. I'm just saying my events are different. But that's a general question, Gerard. It's some people are broken and they're looking to fill some emotional wounds. Some people are at the top of their game in business, and they're looking to scale their companies. Some people go to these events because they're lost and looking for guidance, and they're looking for their way in the world. I think a lot of people in the world today are very lost. Society has sold them a bill of goods that if you, make money, and if you have the right handbag, and if you drive the right car, and if you live in the right neighborhood, you're going to wake up full of joy and a sense of meaning, and your life will be great. And we all know that's just a drug. I mean, to be blatant, I mean, that's like we all do this to varying degrees, but that's like a heroin addict. You want more money, or you want more things, or you want more fame, or you want more Facebook likes or Instagram likes, because it gives you a shot in the arm that fills a hole for about half a day, if that. And I think the real answer is to realize two things. If you really want greatness, I wrote a book 15 years ago, The Greatness Guide. And if you really want greatness, if you really want leadership, it's not about things, it's not about the ego pursuits, it's not about the world. It's about, number one, going within and discovering your genius and your talents, and having the guts not only to live them, but to present them to the world And related to that, when you present them to the world being an instrument of service to humanity, so that when you retire and later die, you have served people by leaving the world better than you found.
You know, I'm just humble listening to the words coming out of your mouth, Robin. I really am. And I feel like, wouldn't we all be so much better committing to mastery instead of committing to external? Like, a lot of the greats, the titans of the world spend a lot of time in solitude, and it's something I do a lot of myself, because I feel like that's what really grounds me and connects better to my inner creativity. So,
Absolutely.
like,
Absolutely, yeah.
Why are we not out there mastering our crafts?
Because, well, I think some people are, and more people are, but it's like that old movie. It's still one of my favorite movies, and it's The Matrix. And The Matrix was based on Plato's cave metaphor. But as you know from The Matrix, have you seen The Matrix, Gerard?
Unfortunately, I haven't.
Oh, you've got to see it. But the point is, Neo was plugged into the Matrix, and a lot of us are plugged into the Matrix, and we're in this illusion. And if you look at the great heroes, they all have suffered more than the average person. And Rumi says it beautifully: break your heart over and over again until it opens. Now, that's not a soft concept. The greatest leaders of society, the true heroes of humanity, they all had one thing in common. They were broken by the world and suffered such pain that they were broken open and that their egos were shattered. And so that's why these heroes like Mandela, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., they not only spent a lot of time in solitude. You're absolutely right about that, because that's how you discover yourself and your values and what's important. But these people were also hurt a lot. And, I had the privilege last summer of being in Nelson Mandela's prison cell, and a former ANC prisoner did the tour, and I said, did you meet Nelson Mandela? And he laughed, and he said, I knew Nelson Mandela for 8 or 9 years while I was in prison on Robben Island. And of course I said, what was he like? And I've never forgotten what the ex-ANC prisoner said. He said, with such sincerity on his face, he said, "Oh, that man was a humble servant." So my point is, if you want to be a true hero, don't make it about you. Make it about your work. Make it about your craft. Make it about helping your customers. Make it about, and it's fine to have a nice car and money and all those things, It makes the journey better, of course. But if you want to play in the rare air of true leadership and heroism, no matter what you do, you can be a street sweeper, a taxi driver, a coder, but start thinking about what your work and what your life can do for the benefit of your family, your community, and the world. And then the money follows as a byproduct of that intention to help more people.
Wow. Robin, just to finish up, I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions, and just maybe 1 or 2 words on the question. So the first question is, what's one of the books that's moved you the most?
That is what?
That has moved you most.
That has moved me the most. Mm-hmm. I would say, I like Paulo's book. You mentioned Paulo Coelho. He's a wonderful person. The Alchemist is a beautiful book. Of course, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. When I've gone through very hard times in my life, I've gone through the pages of The Prophet, and that's spelled for your listeners, Prophet. That book is absolutely profound. Hope for the Flowers is another great book. I could just go on and on. I think Plato said it well. A home filled with books is a beautiful home.
Oh, that's for sure. And so, what's something you wish you knew sooner? That you now know.
Well, I don't know. I think everything in its own time. I don't have any regrets in my life. I think you get the lessons when you're ready to hear them. So.
Yeah. That's actually probably the best answer I've ever got.
I mean, I don't know. The ego would say, "I wish I learned how to hire the team I now have earlier."
Yeah. Well,
I wish I understood relationships better earlier, but I wouldn't be who I am right now talking to you, but for my mistakes and my stumbles.
Yeah. Wow. And what do you think the world needs more of?
Authenticity, creativity, bravery, humanity, mastery, and love.
Oh, you took the words out of my mouth, Robin. You took the words out of my mouth. So just in closing, Robin, have you anything that you would like to close with? A quote or just one more little nugget of an insight?
Well, most of my life, we got philosophical in this podcast, and I'm happy we did. But most of my life, I teach personal mastery and leadership. And so one quote I'd say is one of my quotes, you can lead without a title or you can make excuses. You can't do both. And the second thing I'd say is, use the rest of your life as an example of service, mastery, and decency. And if anyone wants to go deeper into my work, I'm working on the 5 a.m. club. It'll probably be ready in about 6 months, but they can read The Leader Who Had No Title, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, and check out more of my work on robinsharma.com. And I love the social media, so I'm all over Instagram and Facebook if that would be helpful to any of your listeners who have liked what they've heard and they want to experience more of my work.
Perfect, Robin. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
You're good. You're good. Nice to talk to you, Gerard.
So, everybody, that was our guest, Robin Sharma. For more information, please head on over to all his social media channels and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share. Sharing is caring, everybody. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye now.